This program is brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Mosaic, a daily news program from Link TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
Iraq has witnessed yet another day of bloody attacks, which have killed more than 20 Iraqis, including 12 workers who were killed in an ambush by armed assailants in the city of Baquba. Meanwhile, the Iraqi police force found 13 bodies in scattered areas in Baghdad.
The strongest bloody bombing attack during the past few hours took place in the city of Baquba. More than 12 Iraqis were killed when a number of armed assailants opened fire on their vehicle north of the city. And as Iraqi police units arrived at the scene, a roadside bomb exploded.
The victim's vehicle came under gunfire as it was traveling in the Hadid area. A roadside bomb also exploded near the scene of the incident.
In another development, an Iraqi police sergeant was assassinated and 2 of his bodyguards were wounded in the city of Baquba. The head of public relations in the Iraqi Ministry of Defense was killed after his car came under gunfire by armed assailants in the area of Bayya' near the Iraqi capital. Moreover, a roadside bomb exploded in the city of Tal Afar near the Iraqi-Syrian border, killing nearly 24 Iraqis and injuring 130 others.
A criminal terrorist detonated a booby-trapped vehicle in this residential area. This area does not have any police or military checkpoints.
According to a statement issued by the office of the Iraqi President Jalal al-Talibani on the alarming security situation in Iraq, more than 1,091 Iraqis were killed in Baghdad during the month of April. President Talibani called on all government and security agencies to move quickly and stop the bloodshed. He expressed anger and concern over the increase in the level of violence and random killings, including frequent discoveries of bodies to unknown victims.
The Iraqi Prime Minister-designate Noor Al-Maliki said that a national unity government will be formed in the next 2 days, after a 5-month stalemate that began after the December 2005 parliamentary elections. The Iraqi president's spokesman, Karman Gordagi, said that the National Reconciliation Conference might be held in Baghdad in July in an attempt to end the cycle of violence that has exhausted Iraq. Meanwhile, 19 people, including a judge, were killed in separate attacks. In addition, 12 other bodies were found, including the bodies of 3 Iraqi soldiers in the south of Baghdad.
For the first time since he was designated to form the new Iraqi government, the Prime Minister-designate, Noor Maliki, announced that the national unity government is about to be formed, thus ending all doubts. He also reassured different Iraqi political parties that the ministries of defense and interior will be filled by 2 independent candidates.
We already made a decision on how to fill the executive positions. The same goes for other important ministries. We only have to decide on a few other ministries. Perhaps today or tomorrow we will complete the formation of the government. We have passed the more difficult phase and we only have a little left to do.
Meanwhile, Iraqi political parties continue intensive negotiations to complete the formation of the government and select independent candidates from the Iraqi parliament members to fill the sensitive ministries.
There is a consensus to have 2 deputy prime ministers, one from the Iraqi list and the other from from the Iraqi accordance list. The names were already decided. I believe a consensus was reached on Barham Saleh and Salam al-Zubai. There were some differences about who will occupy the executive ministries. The Minister of Defense will be given to the Iraqi list with the consent of the Iraqi accordance list. The Iraqi list is expected to nominate a person who could be selected from their list or could be an independent candidate.
Maliki has vowed to enforce strong control over security to protect citizens from kidnappings and killings. Meanwhile, violence continues in Iraq. So far, 11 bodies were found, including the body of an 11-year-old child, in addition to 3 headless bodies of Iraqi soldiers. The bodies were disposed of in different areas in Baghdad. Also, 2 civilians were killed and 4 security guards in charge of protecting the electricity grids were injured when a roadside bomb exploded under their vehicle in a Sha'b neighborhood north of Baghdad. Armed men assassinated an imam of one of Baghdad's mosques in the south. 1 civilian and 2 Iraqi soldiers were injured in 2 separate attacks when explosive devices were used against targets in the Dura and Rostamiya areas. In Kirkuk in the north, 1 Iraqi soldier was killed and 2 others were injured when armed assailants attacked them. Also, armed assailants killed 4 police officers in Ramadi, west of Baghdad. The United Nations Security Council held a special session to discuss a United States proposal which calls for strengthening the deployed forces in the region of Darfur and expediting the deployment of United Nations peacekeeping forces there. United States Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice asked Security Council to support the American initiative and urged the Sudanese government to fully cooperate with it. Rice also called on the United Nations Secretary General to present a plan for the deployment of international peacekeeping forces in the region within 30 days.
ملف دارفور في مجلس الأمن من جديد.
Darfur's file was once again discussed in the Security Council. The Council held a special session on Darfur to discuss recent developments.
تقديم الدعم الإنساني اللازم للسكان المتضررين. الدعوة الأولى كانت وراءها
The U.S. Secretary of State urged the Security Council to deploy international security forces in the western Sudanese region of Darfur. Meanwhile, Britain asked the Council to sponsor an international conference for donor countries in order to send humanitarian aid to displaced families in the war-torn region of Darfur. The UN wants to deploy peacekeeping forces in Darfur in an attempt to contain the security situation, which may re-escalate. The United States urged the Sudanese government to cooperate fully with peace efforts and to allow access to a UN technical team which is on its way to Darfur. The team will evaluate the security situation in Darfur in preparations for the deployment of international troops that will replace the African Union forces deployed there. While many countries, including Denmark, welcomed the UN initiative, China was reluctant to follow suit. However, Beijing confirmed that it is willing to work for maintaining a lasting peace in the region. According to observers, the UN is trying to rally world support for the deployment of its forces in Darfur. It sent several UN envoys to the region. Clashes will most likely erupt again in the region during the upcoming weeks due to the difficulty of controlling some of the rebel factions that have opposed the Abuja Agreement.
Today, the security situation in Darfur is deteriorating. We hope that the Abuja Peace Agreement will de-escalate the situation. We urge all rebel groups in Darfur to sign the peace agreement.
The UN envoy was caught off guard when thousands of angry local residents stormed and attacked his entourage, forcing him to leave immediately. However, an angry mob emerged from the crowd and beat to death a Sudanese interpreter working for the African Union forces. The AU is monitoring a fragile ceasefire in the region of Darfur. The UN is politicizing the incident in order to gain more support for its plan of deploying international security forces in Darfur. Meanwhile, the U.S. President called on Khartoum to accept the deployment of UN forces in the region.
The Sudanese government has promised to disarm the Janjaweed rebels and punish those responsible for the security deterioration in the region. The people of Darfur deserve real protection, which can be made possible by the deployment of UN peacekeeping forces.
However, Khartoum confirmed that it will not honor the deployment of the UN forces in Darfur, saying that the crisis started to dissipate after the Sudanese Liberation Movement, the largest rebel group in Darfur, signed the Abuja Agreement. The Sudanese government also believes that many smaller rebel factions may follow suit.
A Palestinian official said that medicine reserves and warehouses are running out in the Palestinian territories, especially in the West Bank. What has made matters worse is the severe lack of gas and other forms of fuel after Israel cut off oil supplies to the area. The threat of gas shortage came as a result of the financial and economic crisis, which began when Western nations froze most of their aid and cut off most of their diplomatic ties after the Islamic resistance group Hamas took over the Palestinian government.
Despite Palestinian officials and international organizations' warnings, the Palestinian territories day after day are quickly heading towards a humanitarian catastrophe due to the isolation and imposed siege by Israel and the West. The health sector, which was the first to be affected by this siege, appears to be on the verge of collapse, as their emergency medicine reserves stored in the warehouses of the Ministry of Health are being depleted. Hospitals also face a bitter reality that is difficult to overcome. They have been forced to reduce the amount of services to sick patients despite some limited aid from international health institutions.
There's a lack of medicine for children, pregnant, and nursing women. The total amount of the Emergency Health Aid Project is $10 million for 2 years. We're in the third phase of this project, having started in 2001. We also work with other financial institutions such as the World Bank, UNICEF, the UN, and international institutions to cover the needs of the Palestinian people. Of course, the necessities of the Ministry of Health cost about $4 million a month for medicine.
This aid is heading to the Gaza Strip and includes 2 trucks of medicine that will only provide for 50,000 people in normal conditions and just for 1 month. Palestinian fears concerning the health sector have increased, especially considering that within the next few hours, work may have to stop at a Palestinian pharmaceutical factory due to a shortage of oil.
We're the largest gas station with the largest reserves, but within 1 or 2 days, we had a major shortage. There were no supplies of gasoline. There was nothing. Of course, it affects citizens' daily lives. With regards to travel, transporting medicine between cities is a problem. Of course, there is a major problem with the lack of food as well.
Amidst these fears, cars crowd gas stations, some of which have depleted their fuel and energy reserves after the Israeli Door Company, the main distributor of gasoline and cooking gas to the Palestinian authorities, unilaterally stopped transporting fuel to the Palestinian Authority under the pretext of unpaid debts. The situation has further complicated Palestinians' daily lives.
This is only going to last a day or 2. We are afraid that our problems will get worse, so we are here filling up gas.
Despite reassuring signs coming from the quartet meeting in New York with regard to providing humanitarian aid to the Palestinians, the reality on the ground is not reassuring, since the siege and starvation have affected all aspects of life, leaving the Palestinians to struggle with life's major and minor difficulties.
As instructed by the Syrian President Bashar al-Assad, and in light of an agreement reached between Damascus, the Palestinian government, and the Special National Committee on Palestinian Refugees, Syria opened its doors with love and respect to those Palestinian refugees who have been stranded on the Jordanian-Iraqi borders for nearly 2 months.
Amidst a state of happiness and joy, nearly 244 Palestinian refugees who have been stranded living under harsh conditions for the past 2 months on the Jordanian-Iraqi borders arrived in Syria. The refugees expressed gratitude to Mr. Bashar al-Assad, President of the Arab Republic of Syria. This news came in light of an agreement that was reached between Damascus, the Palestinian government, and the Special National Committee on Palestinian Refugees stranded on Iraqi-Jordanian borders. 50 families, including 70 children and 30 women, have arrived from Iraq on 9 buses. The Syrian Authority and the Syrian Red Crescent welcomed the refugees at the Tanaf border crossing, providing them with food and drinks and helping them to complete necessary measures prior to entering the country.
وإجراء ما يلزم لإتمام دخولهم إلى الأراضي السورية في منطقة التنف الحدودية.
As instructed by His Excellency Dr. Bashar al-Assad, we formed this committee, which includes government officials and international organizations such as the United Nations Relief and Work Agency UNRWA to oversee the transition. The refugees will be accommodated temporarily in Syria until we find a permanent solution to their problems.
I would like to extend my gratitude to the Syrian government for receiving those displaced refugees who were stranded for a long time on the Jordanian-Iraqi borders.
In particular, the UNRWA has worked in conjunction with the Syrian government, the General Committee for Palestinian Refugees, and a number of United Nations organizations to provide protection for those displaced people who have arrived today in Damascus.
We would like to thank Syria for its efforts in allowing us access. Syria saved us from the hard living conditions that we experienced on the Iraqi border.
In the name of God, the most merciful, the most compassionate, we came here today to welcome our Palestinian brothers and sisters to Syria. Syria is a proud, resilient, and generous country. It opened its doors to Palestinian refugees in the aftermath of the 1948 war, and it reopened its doors to those displaced on the Iraqi borders. President Bashar al-Assad has proven once again that we are one united nation.
We welcome you today in our beloved Syria. This blessed nation welcomes the freedom fighters and the children of Palestine. Today, Syria embraces and welcomes our children and the children of Palestine. Welcome to Syria.
Amidst a state of happiness and joy, the Palestinian refugees extended thanks and gratitude to His Excellency Bashar al-Assad, President of the Arab Republic of Syria, for this great gesture.
Prime Minister Fuad Siniora returned from Britain early this morning. During his stay in the UK, Siniora urged Britain to help put pressure on Israel to withdraw its troops from the Shibaa farms. He also pressed his British counterpart for increased assistance in reforming the Lebanese economy. Yumna Tayyara reports.
Premier Fuad Siniora said that his British counterpart Tony Blair understood the Lebanese stance in regards to the Shibaa farms and expressed his willingness to help Lebanon. Siniora also asked Blair to help resolve the Arab-Israeli conflict and so that Lebanon and Arab region may benefit. He specified on the need to support the Palestinian refugee camps as living conditions were very bad and would require support from the international community to improve. Siniora asked Blair for economic help for Lebanon ahead of the Beirut 1 International Donors Conference. Siniora added that he remained determined to visit Damascus for talks with Syria to normalize relations with Lebanon's neighbor. He told reporters that he was really interested in going to Damascus because it was the only way to resolve issues with the sister country. Following the meeting with Blair, Siniora held a press conference at the Chatham House. An employee from the Israeli embassy in London addressed Siniora by asking what would guarantee that Hezbollah Hezbollah would not come up with a new pretext to attack Israel, even if Israel withdraws from the Shebaa farms. He also told Siniora that hostage Samir Kantar would never be liberated.
What Israel is doing there in occupied territories of Lebanon and Syria, what is it doing there? Why should it continue to be there? It has to withdraw. If we want to have peace, we want peace. We want to have a just and a lasting peace, a comprehensive one, for the Arab children and for the Israeli children. We are still bragging on this and bragging on that. Why? It is high time to do it. The Arabs, after all this period of suffering and killing and so on, they came to the conclusion, yes, we are ready to recognize the state of Israel. And we are ready to go to what was agreed upon. There are certain resolutions that were taken. There are certain agreements that were made. And every now and then, we go back on them. Who is going back? Israel is going back. The Arabs, they have extended a hand to the world community and to the Israelis. And they want real peace. This hand was extended in the year 2002 with the Arab Peace Initiative. What are we waiting for? We are still wasting time.
President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad says certain regimes are trying to impose their unilateralist and expansionist policies on the world. Mr. Ahmadinejad made this remark at a dinner party hosted by his Indonesian counterpart, Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono.
The Iranian president said the desire for justice and perfection is on the rise worldwide, especially in the Islamic world. The Indonesian president, for his part, described his talks with Ahmadinejad as important and constructive. In their official talks, which followed a private meeting, Mr. Yudhoyono voiced his country's support of Iran's right to peaceful nuclear energy. He also called for expansion of bilateral relations in the economic, political, and cultural areas. Ahmadinejad described Iran's defense of its nuclear right as defending the rights of all independent nations.
Meanwhile, in the day, the Iranian president, in a press conference with his Indonesian counterpart, reiterated that the Iranian nation will not back off from its legitimate rights. He also noted that Tehran rejects any rash or wrong decision taken by the IAEA or the UN Security Council on its peaceful nuclear program. Iran and Indonesia, meanwhile, signed a $5 billion energy pact in Jakarta on Wednesday.
6 cooperation agreements on cultural and tourism exchange, customs, energy, science and technology, refinery construction, as well as industry were also signed between the two sides on the first day of an official visit by President Ahmadinejad to Indonesia. Present at the signing ceremony were also Mohammad Reza Nehmatzadeh, Iranian Deputy Oil Minister, and Mehdi Safari, Deputy Foreign Minister. Elsewhere in the day, President Ahmadinejad held separate meetings on international developments with Indonesian Vice President Muhammad Kalla, Head of Indonesian People's Representative Council, Hidayat Nur Wahid, and Head of Indonesian Parliament, Agung Laksono.
U.S. President George W. Bush, in his first public reaction to a letter sent by his Iranian counterpart, Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, said the document failed to respond to international concerns about Tehran's nuclear program. Bush said in a roundtable discussion on Tuesday, quote, "It looks like it did not answer the main question that the world is asking, and that is, when will you get rid of your nuclear program?" End of quote. The letter sent Monday by President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad called for new ways to settle Tehran's long-running nuclear dispute. Bush, meanwhile, described as difficult reaching an agreement on Iran, calling for a diplomatic timetable in which the dispute could be resolved. Secretary of Iran's National Security Council Ali Larijani says weapons of mass destruction have no place in Tehran's defense doctrine. Larijani made the remark in a press conference in Athens in Greece and added, however, Washington is trying to mislead world public opinion. Iran's top nuclear negotiator termed handling the country's nuclear case at the Council as a scandal for the UN Security Council and said the Security Council should not bar Iran from conducting scientific research. Larijani concluded Iran will continue its cooperation with the International Atomic Energy Agency and will not drop out of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty.
Different parts of the country witnessed festive activities to commemorate the May 8, 1945 massacre. This occasion is important because it teaches us the lessons from history. We learn about the greatness of those who sacrificed their lives for independence and freedom in the ugly face of colonization and its brutality. Fatiya al-Zahra covered the different festive activities.
من هذا اليوم كانت الصيف المدينة التي فجرت أحداث 8 ماي 1945.
61 years ago, the city of Stef witnessed the incidents of May 1945. Today, the same city is commemorating the martyr Abu Zaid Saad and other martyrs. They put bouquets of flowers on their graves and prayed for their pure spirits. They also organized massive demonstrations in the main streets of the city and showed a historical film that illustrates the brutality of the colonizers. Wahran also witnessed a massive gathering of citizens in the December 11th square to commemorate the revolution by putting bouquets of flowers on graves and reciting some parts of the Holy Quran, praying for the souls of the martyrs. The organization of Mash'al al-Shahid in the state of Bashar organized several cultural and educational activities, including a photo exhibit and a lecture about the role that the 5th Algerian state of Bashar has played during the liberation movement. Moreover, the municipality of Oregon in the state of Jijil gave the Valor of Honor to some freedom fighters of May 8, 1945. The state of Castini organized an educational meeting criticizing France for refusing to take responsibility for the massacres of 1945. Participants showed documents proving that the French massacres of May 8th did take place against the Algerian people. In the state of Bin Abbas, Algerians took to the streets in massive demonstrations commemorating this occasion. Local officials and school children in the district of Sidi Muhammad in the Algerian capital celebrated this occasion by publishing a book titled A Message to My Country. The book was written by young children whose hearts are full of love for their country.
بعنوان رسالة إلى وطني كتبته أقلام صغيرة تحمل قلوبا كبيرة للوطن.
Today I am a child, and as each day passes by, my love and respect to my country increases.
Local officials in the Moroccan capital, Rabat, organized a meeting to discuss illiteracy among children. They approved the implementation of an official study that will assess the illiteracy rate among Moroccan children.
Nearly 1,000 schools in various municipalities will benefit from this study. The program will be carried out by more than 10,000 trained school children who will distribute survey samples and questionnaires to the targeted children.
We will educate and train those students how to conduct interviews and fill out the surveys. They will go out to low-income neighborhoods looking for children who do not attend elementary schools.
Meanwhile, UNICEF launched pilot programs in 10 Moroccan municipalities in light of the positive results achieved during its initial study.
Every child that drops out of school costs the government more than 3,000 dirham. The magnitude of this phenomenon is more serious than it sounded, especially considering that more than 250,000 children drop out of elementary schools annually.
Currently, the school dropout rate among Moroccan children is more than 6%, and the illiteracy rate among children exceeds 13%. This calls for the introduction of awareness programs and the implementation of practical plans aimed at combating and containing this phenomenon.
The views expressed on Mosaic are not those of Link TV or its sponsors, but of the broadcasters themselves. Mosaic is made possible by a grant from the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, which promotes journalism excellence worldwide and invests in the vitality of 26 U.S. communities, and the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation. Additional support is provided by the Firedoll Foundation and Henry and Virgilia Dakin. This program is brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Link TV is the only U.S. television network devoted to global and national news, with uncompromising documentaries and diverse cultural programs which connect you to the world.